Close your eyes now and let your mind drift back. Imagine a world not so long ago, yet feeling a lifetime away. A world where vast oceans stretched to the horizon, their mysteries largely untouched, their secrets whispered only in the salty spray of the waves. This is the dawn of the age of exploration, a time of boundless curiosity and audacious dreams. Picture the bustling port cities, a symphony of creaking wood, shouting sailors, and the rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer. The air hums with a restless energy, a yearning to break free from the known, to uncover the wonders hidden beyond the familiar shores. For centuries, Europe had looked outward, glimpsed distant lands in travelers' tales, and now a new spirit stirred. The desire to find new trade routes, richer spices, and perhaps even legendary kingdoms of gold sparked a fervent race across the seas. Think of the brave individuals who embarked on these perilous journeys. Christopher Columbus, his name etched in history, though his legacy remains complex and debated, sailed westward, seeking a shorter route to the East Indies. His voyages, though not achieving their intended goal, opened a new world to European eyes, one teeming with vibrant cultures and unimaginable riches. Vasco da Gama, with his determined spirit, rounded the Cape of Good Hope, forging a sea route to India, opening up a pathway for trade and influence that would reshape the world. Ferdinand Magellan, driven by unwavering ambition, though he wouldn't live to see it, circumnavigated the globe, proving the world's roundness and expanding the boundaries of human understanding. These are just a few names, of course, among many. Thousands of sailors, navigators, cartographers, and explorers, known and unknown, risked everything to push the frontiers of knowledge. Their voyages were fraught with danger, from violent storms and treacherous currents to encounters with unfamiliar cultures and diseases. Yet, driven by ambition, the allure of the unknown, and often by the financial rewards awaiting successful ventures, they set sail, their small ships swallowed by the immensity of the ocean, carrying with them the hopes and aspirations of a world eager for discovery. Let the rhythm of the waves lull you into a peaceful slumber as you drift further back into this era of wonder and peril. Now, drift away with me to a time long ago, a time of great wonder and discovery. Picture the coast of Portugal, rugged and beautiful, bathed in the warm glow of the sun. From these shores, brave sailors set out on journeys that would change the world. Their ships, sturdy caravels, were designed for exploration, their sails catching the steady winds of the Atlantic. These early Portuguese explorers weren't driven by dreams of riches alone, though gold and spices certainly played a part. There was also a thirst for knowledge, a desire to map the unknown, to chart the coastline of Africa, a continent shrouded in mystery. Slowly, carefully, they crept southward, inching along the western edge of the continent. Each voyage built upon the last, each captain learning from the successes and failures of those who had come before. Imagine the quiet anticipation as they sailed beyond the familiar, the hushed excitement as they encountered new lands and peoples. They met Berber traders, their markets overflowing with exotic goods. They saw vast deserts stretching to the horizon and dense jungles teeming with unfamiliar life. These encounters, peaceful and sometimes tense, broadened their understanding of the world, adding detail to the slowly expanding maps. The voyages were long and arduous, weeks and months spent at sea, the constant rhythm of the waves a hypnotic lullaby. Storms raged, threatening to swallow the small ships whole, but the Portuguese sailors persevered, guided by the stars above and a deep-seated determination to push the boundaries of the known. They established trading posts along the coast, little outposts of civilization in a vast, uncharted wilderness, gradually extending their influence and opening up new trade routes. This slow, steady expansion along the African coast wasn't just about exploration. It transformed Portugal's economy and global standing. The trade in gold, ivory, and slaves, while morally reprehensible by today's standards, brought immense wealth to the nation, fueling its growth and ambition. And with each new voyage, the world grew smaller, the mysteries of the unknown slowly unraveling, bit by bit, voyage by voyage. Let the gentle sway of the waves lull you to sleep as we continue our journey through time. Imagine, if you will, a time long ago, before the convenience of supermarkets and spice racks. A time when the scent of cinnamon, cloves, and pepper was a rare and precious thing, a whisper of distant lands carried on the wind. These weren't just seasonings, they were treasures, highly sought after and incredibly valuable. This is the story of the spice trade, a powerful incentive that fueled exploration and changed the course of history. Picture bustling marketplaces, vibrant with colors and sounds. Merchants haggled over small sacks of nutmeg, their fingers tracing the contours of precious cardamom pods. These weren't just everyday ingredients, they were luxury goods, coveted by royalty and wealthy merchants alike. The aroma of these spices, so exotic and alluring, hinted at faraway lands, lands of mystery and adventure. To possess them was to possess a piece of the exotic, a touch of the unknown. The routes these spices took were long and arduous, winding their way across continents. Imagine the creak of wooden ships, the rhythmic sway of the ocean, the tireless work of sailors navigating treacherous waters. From the fragrant lands of India, across the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean, to the bustling ports of the Middle East, and then further still to Europe, the spices journeyed. These weren't simply routes for goods, they were paths of immense economic power. Control of these routes meant control of incredible wealth. And it is this allure of riches that drove kings and queens, merchants and explorers to embark on daring voyages. Think of the immense profits to be made. A single pound of pepper could be worth more than a pound of gold in some places. This economic incentive was a powerful engine, pushing intrepid explorers to brave the unknown. They braved storms, disease, and the dangers of uncharted territories, all fueled by the promise of unimaginable wealth that lay at the end of those spice-laden routes. The spice trade was not simply about seasonings. It was a catalyst for global exploration, a driving force behind the discovery and mapping of new worlds, a testament to the human desire for both luxury and economic dominance. And so, as you drift off to sleep, let the gentle scent of these distant spices linger in your mind, a reminder of the long and fascinating journey they took to reach your table. Now, let's drift gently towards the story of Christopher Columbus and his voyages across the ocean. Imagine the creak of wooden ships, the vastness of the sea stretching endlessly under a star-filled sky. Columbus, driven by a belief he could find a westward route to the East Indies, set sail in 1492. His 3 small ships, the Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, carried him and his crew on a journey filled with both wonder and peril. After weeks at sea, land finally appeared. Not the Spice Islands of Asia as he'd hoped, but the islands of the Bahamas. Columbus stepped onto the sand, believing he had reached the Indies, a name that stuck for some time. He encountered the Taino people, the indigenous inhabitants of these islands. He wrote of their kindness, their generosity, their willingness to share their resources. Yet, this initial encounter would tragically mark the beginning of a long and brutal chapter in history. Columbus's subsequent voyages led to the establishment of European colonies, bringing with them diseases that decimated the native populations. Measles, smallpox, and influenza, diseases unknown to the Taino, spread like wildfire, devastating their communities. The arrival of Europeans also brought conflict and exploitation. The Taino and other indigenous groups were forced into labor, subjected to harsh conditions in mines and plantations. Columbus himself was involved in the brutal subjugation of the native peoples, establishing a system of forced labor known as the encomienda. This system led to widespread suffering and the near extinction of many groups. So, as we think about Columbus, we must acknowledge the complexities of his legacy. His voyages were a pivotal moment in history, marking the beginning of European colonization of the Americas, opening up vast new trade routes and forever altering the course of human history. Yet, we cannot ignore the horrific consequences of his actions and the immense suffering he inflicted upon the indigenous peoples. His story reminds us to examine the past with a critical eye, recognizing both achievements and devastations, and to learn from the mistakes of history. Let the gentle rhythm of the waves lull you into a peaceful sleep as you carry this complex story with you into your dreams. The year is 1497. Imagine the creak of wood, the salty spray of the ocean, and the endless horizon stretching before you. You are aboard one of Vasco da Gama's 4 ships, a tiny speck on the vast, restless Atlantic. Ahead lies the unknown, the legendary lands of India, whispered about in hushed tones in taverns and marketplaces for centuries. Da Gama, a Portuguese nobleman, driven by ambition and the promise of unimaginable riches, had set sail to find a sea route to the east, a route that would bypass the established land routes controlled by powerful middlemen. The journey was arduous. Months bled into one another, marked only by the relentless rhythm of the waves and the ever-present threat of storms. The sun beat down mercilessly, turning the decks into ovens. Scurvy, a terrible disease caused by a lack of fresh fruits and vegetables, weakened the crew. Food grew scarce, tempers flared, and the endless expanse of ocean began to feel like a cruel, inescapable prison. But Da Gama, with his unwavering determination, pressed on. They rounded the Cape of Good Hope, a treacherous landmark feared by sailors for its unpredictable currents and dangerous winds. The relief must have been immense when they finally passed this formidable barrier. Yet their trials were far from over. They navigated unfamiliar coastlines, encountered fierce storms, and had tense, cautious encounters with local peoples along the African coast, seeking supplies and information, always inching closer to their ultimate goal. After months at sea, a glimmer of hope, the distant sight of land. They had arrived in Calicut on the Malabar coast of India. It was a moment of profound historical significance. Vasco da Gama had accomplished the seemingly impossible, opening a direct sea route between Europe and India. This momentous journey marked the beginning of Portuguese influence in the East, changing the course of world trade and history. Though the initial trade exchanges were not as lucrative as initially hoped, the establishment of this sea route was a profound achievement, paving the way for future exploration and the age of global trade that was to follow. The seeds of a new era had been sown, a legacy that would ripple through the centuries. And as the sun dips below the horizon, casting a golden glow on the water, you drift off to sleep, carrying with you the echoes of this epic voyage. Now, let's drift gently across the vast ocean to the year 1519. Imagine the creak of wooden ships, the salt spray on your face, the endless horizon. This is the beginning of Ferdinand Magellan's incredible journey, a voyage that would change the world. He set sail from Spain with 5 ships, a flotilla brimming with dreams and ambition, a dream to circumnavigate the globe. Picture the men aboard those ships, weathered sailors, hopeful explorers, each with their own story, their own anxieties whispering in the salty wind. They sailed through the tempestuous waters of the Atlantic, braving storms that threatened to swallow their fragile vessels whole. The journey was long, arduous, filled with the monotony of days that bled into weeks, weeks into months. Reaching South America, they faced the daunting task of navigating the treacherous strait that now bears Magellan's name. Imagine the suspense, the claustrophobic feeling of being hemmed in by towering cliffs, the constant fear of hidden reefs and unpredictable currents. It was a test of endurance, of courage, of the very spirit of human exploration. Many of the men suffered from scurvy, their bodies weakened by the lack of fresh food. Supplies dwindled, tempers flared, and the whispers of mutiny rose in the dark. Emerging from the strait, they found themselves in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, a seemingly endless ocean of blue. They sailed for months across this immense expanse, encountering storms and calms, periods of plenty and periods of desperate hunger. The journey was a harsh teacher. The unforgiving nature of the sea tested their resolve at every turn. Magellan himself would meet his end in the Philippines, tragically killed in a local conflict. Despite the losses, the expedition pressed on, and one ship, the Victoria, finally completed the circumnavigation, returning to Spain in 1522. Only 18 of the original 270 men survived this epic voyage, a testament to the immense challenges faced. Magellan's expedition, though incredibly difficult, proved the world was round, connecting the oceans and opening up new possibilities. It was a monumental achievement, a journey that forever changed our understanding of the world, and a testament to the enduring human spirit that seeks to explore, to discover, and to conquer the unknown. Now, breathe deeply. Let your thoughts drift with the tide and drift off to sleep. Now, let's drift gently towards the Spanish Empire, a vast and powerful force that shaped the Americas. Imagine, if you will, the late 15th century. Columbus's voyages, though controversial in their impact, sparked an era of unprecedented exploration and conquest. Spanish conquistadors, driven by ambition and the lure of gold and silver, ventured into the unknown lands of the Americas. Think of Cortés in Mexico, his small band of soldiers facing down the mighty Aztec Empire, a civilization with impressive cities and a complex social structure. The clash of cultures was immense, a story of triumph and tragedy intertwined. The Spanish conquest was not a single event, but a gradual process of expansion. Picture the shimmering gold of the Inca Empire in the Andes Mountains, a civilization that had built magnificent roads and impressive stone cities. A similar story unfolded here of ambitious conquistadors like Pizarro, facing fierce resistance, yet ultimately overcoming the Incas' defenses. The fall of these mighty empires wasn't just a military conquest. It was the beginning of a long and complex process of colonization. The Spanish established vast colonial empires, bringing with them their language, religion, and ways of life. Picture grand colonial cities rising from the land, a blend of European architecture and indigenous styles. But this process was not without immense suffering for the native populations. Diseases brought from Europe decimated indigenous communities, devastating their populations. Forced labor in mines and on plantations became the harsh reality for many, a system of exploitation that left a deep and lasting scar. The traditional ways of life, the intricate social structures, and the rich cultural heritage of the indigenous peoples were often suppressed or destroyed. As the centuries passed, the Spanish Empire expanded its reach, creating a complex web of colonies across the Americas. While the riches flowed back to Spain, enriching its coffers and fueling its power, the cost was high. The legacy of the Spanish conquest remains a complex and multifaceted one, a story whispered on the wind, reminding us of the enduring impact of colonialism and the need to understand the past to build a better future. Let this image, this tapestry of conquest and colonization, gently lull you into a peaceful slumber. Now drift away with us to a time of wooden ships and swelling sails, a time of grand voyages and burgeoning empires. Imagine the scent of salt air and distant spices, the creak of timbers under the weight of the sea. This is the story of Europe's race for global dominance, a quiet competition played out across vast oceans. Portugal, first to the fray, carefully charted a course around Africa, seeking the riches of the East. Their navigators, brave souls all, opened up trade routes to India and beyond, bringing back silks and spices that filled the coffers of their kingdom. But Portugal's hold on these newly discovered lands wouldn't remain unchallenged. Spain, fueled by tales of gold and silver, followed a different path, west across the ocean blue. Columbus's voyages, though fraught with complexities, unlocked a new world, a treasure trove of resources and untold wealth. Silver from the mines of the Americas flowed into Spain, making it a dominant power for a time. Yet this wealth, so readily acquired, also brought its share of unforeseen consequences. England, watching from across the Channel, patiently built its own naval power. With a keen eye for trade and an expanding thirst for exploration, it gradually chipped away at the Portuguese and Spanish monopolies. Their seafarers, tenacious and resourceful, established colonies in North America and elsewhere, carving out their own piece of the global pie. France, too, entered the race, establishing colonies in Canada and the Caribbean. They competed fiercely with England for supremacy in North America, a rivalry that would play out over decades, shaping the very map of the continent. And finally, the Netherlands, a small nation but a mighty trading power, emerged as a major player. Their merchant fleet, known for its efficiency and discipline, carved out lucrative trade routes to the East Indies, accumulating great wealth through the spice trade and other ventures. These nations, each with their own ambitions and strategies, clashed and cooperated in a complex dance of trade and warfare. Their struggles for dominance shaped the world as we know it, the echoes of their voyages still whispering across the waves. Let these stories lull you into a peaceful slumber, as the waves gently rock you towards dreams of faraway lands and forgotten empires. Sleep soundly now. Now, drift away with us as we consider the Columbian Exchange, a quiet but powerful shift across the ocean. Imagine, if you will, the year 1492 and the years that followed. Two worlds so long separate suddenly began to share their treasures, their burdens, and their very lifeblood. From the Old World, across the vast Atlantic, came horses strong and swift, changing the landscapes and lives of the Americas. Cattle and sheep grazed on new pastures, their lowing and bleating a strange new sound in unfamiliar ears. Wheat, barley, and rice, staples of the Old World, found new homes, changing the diet and the very rhythm of life in the New World. But the exchange wasn't just about animals and crops. Sugarcane, a sweet temptation, found fertile ground, transforming economies and creating new labor demands. And then there were the less welcome visitors, the diseases. Smallpox, measles, influenza, diseases the Old World populations had adapted to, but the New World people had no resistance against. These invisible invaders swept through communities, leaving devastation in their wake, a silent tragedy echoing through generations. Conversely, think of the bounty that flowed the other way. Tomatoes, potatoes, corn, and beans, foods that would reshape diets across the globe. These humble plants, once unknown in Europe, Asia, and Africa, became staples, altering culinary landscapes and fueling population growth. Tobacco, a fragrant leaf, found its way to European courts and beyond, its smoke curling into a new global habit. Chocolate, a rich and delicious drink, journeyed across the ocean, captivating palates and becoming a cherished treat. The Columbian Exchange, a slow, deep current of plants and animals, rearranged the very fabric of life on both sides of the Atlantic, leaving a legacy as vast and complex as the ocean itself. Let these images settle in your mind, a gentle rhythm as you drift further into slumber. The slow growth of a potato plant, the vast expanse of a wheat field, the soft lowing of cattle. Sleep now, and let the quiet history of this exchange lull you to peaceful rest. As the ships carrying Europeans sailed closer to the shores of the Americas, they carried with them not only dreams of new beginnings, but also the seeds of devastation. A silent killer, unseen and unheard, accompanied them: disease. Smallpox, measles, influenza, illnesses commonplace in Europe, but for which the indigenous populations had no immunity. Imagine, if you will, a world where you've never encountered such sickness, where your community lives in harmony with nature, and then, suddenly, a wave of death washes over you, taking loved ones, elders, children, leaving behind a landscape of grief and a future uncertain. Entire villages were decimated, their intricate social structures collapsing under the weight of mortality. The knowledge passed down through generations, the stories of creation, the songs of the ancestors, the very fabric of their culture began to unravel. Not only did these diseases steal lives, they stole the past, threatening to erase entire civilizations from the face of the earth. And it wasn't just disease, it was the disruption of life, the displacement from ancestral lands. The arrival of Europeans meant the forceful removal from homes that had been lived in for centuries, the sacred grounds desecrated, the familiar hunting grounds fenced off. The rhythms of life, once harmonious with the seasons, were violently broken, leaving behind a profound sense of loss and disorientation. Picture yourself, a member of a thriving community, suddenly forced to adapt to a foreign way of life. Your language, your customs, your spiritual beliefs, all challenged, all threatened with extinction. Imagine the fear, the helplessness, the quiet desperation that must have filled their hearts as they watched their world crumble around them. The impact was not just physical, it was a deep, spiritual wound that echoed through generations. Let us remember their strength, their resilience, and the enduring legacy of their cultures, even amidst such unimaginable hardship. Let the quiet hush of the night carry the weight of that history, a somber reflection on a chapter of human experience that must never be forgotten. Rest now, and allow these gentle thoughts to drift you into a peaceful sleep. Now, as the gentle rhythm of our voices washes over you, let's drift together to a quieter place, a place of reflection on a darker chapter in human history. We speak of the transatlantic slave trade, a brutal system that ripped millions of people from their homes and families, a system whose shadows still linger across the world today. Imagine the sun setting over the vibrant shores of Africa, a land rich in culture and community. Then picture the horrific reality that unfolded, the forced capture, the brutal journeys across the vast ocean, the suffocating conditions within the holds of ships, places where hope seemed to vanish with every passing day. These were not mere numbers, they were mothers, fathers, children, each with their own dreams, their own laughter, their own stories. Stories that were often silenced, their voices lost to the echoes of the sea. The journey itself was a testament to unimaginable cruelty. Disease, starvation, and violence were constant companions. Many never saw the shores of the Americas, their bodies swallowed by the merciless ocean, their souls lost to the waves. Those who survived endured unspeakable suffering, their bodies and spirits broken under the weight of forced labor and unimaginable hardship. The legacy of this trade reaches far beyond the immediate suffering. It fractured families, shattered cultures, and created deep-seated inequalities that continue to impact societies across the globe. The economic systems built upon this exploitation left scars that persist, reminding us of the profound cost of human greed and injustice. As we gently close our eyes and let the weight of this history settle upon us, let us also remember the resilience and strength of the people who endured these unimaginable horrors. Their spirits, though wounded, were not broken. Their stories, though often silenced, are slowly being rediscovered and shared. And in understanding this dark chapter, we find a path towards a more compassionate and just future. Let this understanding guide our thoughts as we drift off to sleep. And so, the age of discovery unfolded, a slow, steady tide reshaping the world. Imagine, if you will, the tiny ships, their sails catching the wind, venturing further than any had dared before. These journeys, driven by a thirst for spices, for gold, for new lands, irrevocably altered the global landscape. Slowly, painstakingly, new trade routes were established. Thin red lines on the map connecting continents previously separated by vast oceans. The East Indies, once a distant whisper, became a source of unimaginable wealth, flowing into the coffers of European powers. Think of the bustling port cities, growing larger with each passing year. Lisbon, Seville, Amsterdam. These became hubs of commerce, humming with the activity of merchants and sailors, their voices a low murmur in the night. Goods flowed in and out, silks and spices from the East, silver from the Americas, transforming economies and creating new classes of wealthy merchants and powerful traders. But this burgeoning wealth wasn't shared equally. The new global order often meant exploitation, the forceful taking of resources and lands, the displacement and subjugation of indigenous populations. The political map of the world was redrawn too. Nations rose and fell, their power waxing and waning with the tides of trade. Portugal and Spain, the early pioneers of exploration, saw their empires grow, stretching across oceans and continents. But other nations, like England, France, and the Netherlands, weren't far behind, eager to carve their own piece of the expanding pie. Rivalries flourished, leading to conflicts and wars fought over control of trade routes and colonial possessions. The age of discovery, then, wasn't simply a time of exploration, but a time of intense power struggles, a slow, inexorable shift in the global balance of power. New empires were forged, fueled by the ambition of men and the allure of distant lands, changing the very fabric of the world. A quiet revolution played out across decades and centuries. These changes, like the slow turning of the earth, continued to impact the world for generations to come, their influence subtly woven into the fabric of our modern world. Let these images and thoughts settle upon you as you drift into a peaceful slumber. Now, drift away with us to the age of exploration, a time of grand voyages and daring discoveries. Imagine the creak of wooden ships, the salty spray on your face, the vast, unknowable ocean stretching to the horizon. These brave explorers, driven by a thirst for the unknown and the promise of riches, set sail, changing the world forever. Their journeys connected continents, cultures previously isolated, now intertwined. Spices from the East, once luxuries for the few, gradually became more accessible. New foods, new plants, the potato, the tomato, the chili pepper, journeyed across oceans, altering diets and landscapes. Think of your own dinner table, perhaps a dish that owes its origins to these ancient voyages. But the age of exploration wasn't just about trade. It reshaped global politics. Powerful empires rose and fell, fueled by the newfound wealth and resources. New trade routes were established, creating bustling centers of commerce in cities across the globe. Think of the bustling marketplaces, the exchange of goods and ideas. The impact wasn't always positive. The arrival of Europeans brought devastating consequences for many indigenous populations. Diseases unfamiliar to these communities spread like wildfire, causing immense suffering and decimating entire civilizations. The colonization that followed often led to exploitation and injustice, a shadow cast over the era's more glamorous aspects. Yet, even amidst the hardships, cultural exchange continued. Ideas, beliefs, and artistic styles mingled, creating a rich tapestry of global influences. Think of the fusion of cultures, the blending of traditions, the slow but persistent evolution of languages. The age of exploration, with its complex tapestry of achievement and suffering, fundamentally reshaped the world we inhabit today. Its legacy continues to influence global politics, trade, and culture in ways we may not even fully realize. The spices on your evening meal, the clothes you wear, the very language you speak, all may bear silent testament to those long-ago voyages across uncharted waters. Let these thoughts lull you gently into a restful sleep. Drift, drift, sleep. The whispers of the wind carried secrets across the ocean, secrets only the bravest sailors dared to chase. For centuries, journeys across the vast, unknowable sea relied on the stars, a celestial compass guiding ships through treacherous waters. But the 15th and 16th centuries witnessed a quiet revolution, a slow unfolding of navigational innovation that would forever change the world. Imagine, if you will, the creak of a wooden ship, the rhythmic splash of waves against the hull, a gentle rocking that lulls you into a peaceful slumber. The astrolabe, a beautiful and intricate instrument, allowed sailors to measure the altitude of stars and the sun, helping them determine their latitude, their distance north or south of the equator. This was a crucial step, a giant leap towards understanding one's position in the boundless ocean. Picture the skilled hands of a navigator, carefully adjusting the instrument, his eyes fixed on the celestial bodies, a silent conversation between man and the cosmos. Then came the improvements to the compass, no longer a simple, unreliable pointer, but a more accurate device, allowing sailors to maintain a steady course, even when shrouded in fog or battling stormy seas. This meant venturing further, braving the unknown with a little more confidence, a little more certainty. The compass, a small but mighty invention, became a constant companion, a silent reassurance in the face of the unpredictable ocean. And finally, the development of portolan charts, intricate maps detailing coastlines, harbors, and navigational hazards. These weren't just simple sketches. They were works of art, brimming with detailed information gleaned from countless voyages. Each line carefully drawn, each symbol meticulously placed, represented the collective knowledge of generations of sailors, their experiences etched onto parchment, guiding future adventurers. These advancements didn't happen overnight. They were the culmination of centuries of trial, error, and relentless curiosity. Each innovation built upon the last, each discovery paving the way for even bolder explorations. As you drift off to sleep, let the image of these ingenious tools, these navigational marvels, transport you to the age of discovery, a time when the world was slowly but surely revealed, one carefully charted course at a time. Let the gentle rhythm of the waves guide your dreams. Now, as the gentle hum of the evening settles in, let's drift back to a time of great voyages and discovery, the age of exploration. Imagine the creak of wooden ships, the salty air on your skin, as explorers set sail, venturing into the unknown. This era saw a remarkable exchange of goods and ideas across vast oceans, a weaving together of cultures previously separated by immense distances. Picture spices from the East, cinnamon and cloves, making their way to Europe, enriching the lives of many. New foods like potatoes and tomatoes found their way across the Atlantic, transforming diets and landscapes. Think of the vibrant colors of new textiles, intricate patterns and designs, traveling between continents, inspiring new artistic styles. Knowledge flowed too. Navigational techniques, astronomical understanding, and medicinal practices were shared, enriching the world's collective wisdom. It was a fascinating exchange, a slow, steady blending of traditions. Yet, the story isn't solely a peaceful exchange of goods. We must also remember the shadows cast by this era. For many indigenous populations, the arrival of Europeans meant disease, displacement, and exploitation. Entire cultures were ravaged by illnesses they had no immunity to, devastating communities and altering the course of history forever. The quest for resources often resulted in conflict and the disruption of established ways of life. The transatlantic slave trade, a cruel and horrific institution, indelibly scarred societies, leaving a legacy of pain and suffering that echoes through history. The interaction was undoubtedly complex. While some benefited from the influx of new goods and knowledge, others suffered immensely. This era shows us the dual nature of human interaction, the potential for collaboration and advancement, but also for exploitation and destruction. As we let these thoughts drift through our minds, remember that understanding history, both its triumphs and its tragedies, helps us to navigate the present and build a better future. Let the gentle rhythm of our words lull you into a peaceful sleep, carrying you softly into the arms of Morpheus. The ships, once so full of promise and the scent of faraway spices, eventually returned to quieter harbors. The age of exploration, a time of incredible voyages and daring discoveries, was drawing to a close. Think of the maps, slowly filling with new coastlines and islands, each inked line representing both triumph and tragedy. So many brave souls sailed across vast, unknown oceans, driven by a thirst for the new, for riches, for glory. They charted courses across the waves, leaving behind the familiar comfort of home, facing storms and sickness, encountering peoples and cultures vastly different from their own. And what did they achieve? A greater understanding of our world, certainly. New trade routes opened, connecting continents and cultures in ways never before imagined. The exchange of goods, of plants, of animals, a vibrant, albeit often uneven, flow of resources transformed societies across the globe. New foods enriched diets, new technologies spurred innovation. But this exchange also brought disease, exploitation, and conflict. The age of exploration wasn't simply a story of noble discovery. It was a complex tapestry woven with threads of both progress and profound injustice. The indigenous populations who had lived on these lands for generations often paid the highest price for the arrival of these ambitious explorers. Their lives, their cultures, their very existence were irrevocably altered, sometimes violently extinguished. The wealth accumulated through trade and conquest was often built on the backs of enslaved people, their suffering a stark reminder of the moral ambiguities that accompanied this period of expansion. Reflect for a moment on the grand narratives we tell ourselves about this era. They are often simplified, overlooking the complexities and contradictions. The explorers, those bold figures in history books, were often flawed individuals, driven by a mix of ambition, curiosity, and sometimes a breathtaking disregard for the consequences of their actions. The age of exploration ended not with a bang, but with a gradual settling. The intensity of discovery faded, replaced by a more measured engagement with the world. As you drift off to sleep, let the gentle rhythm of the waves carry you into peaceful dreams, and remember that every historical era, even one as transformative as this, holds within it both wonder and regret, light and shadow. The age of exploration, a whisper on the wind, a rustle of old sails. Imagine the creak of wooden ships, the salty spray on sun-weathered faces. These brave explorers, charting unknown waters, driven by a thirst for the new, for the undiscovered. They didn't know what lay ahead, only the persistent pull of the horizon, a promise of something more. Think of their quiet moments, perhaps beneath a star-studded sky, far from home. The vast ocean a comforting blanket around their little wooden vessels. The spices they sought, the silks, the gold. These treasures, now faded memories, whispered tales in dusty museum halls. But the echoes of their journeys remain, shaping the world we know today. The maps they drew, painstakingly charting each island, each bay, each treacherous reef. These maps became bridges, connecting continents, cultures, and destinies. They faced storms, starvation, disease, the unknown. Yet they persevered. Their stories, woven into the very fabric of our history, are a testament to human resilience, to the persistent yearning for discovery. Now, as the gentle music washes over you, let the rhythm lull you into a peaceful slumber. Feel the weight of your eyelids growing heavy, the tension melting away from your shoulders. Let the whispers of history carry you to a tranquil sleep. The scent of distant shores, the creak of aged wood, the soft murmur of the waves, all fade now into the quiet stillness of the night. Breathe deeply, in and out, letting go of the day's concerns. The explorer's journeys, though filled with adventure, also held moments of quiet reflection, of gazing at the endless expanse of water, of pondering the vastness of the world. Let those quiet moments be your own now, as you drift away into slumber. The age of exploration continues in a different way within you. The exploration of your own inner world, the journey into the depths of your dreams. Let the whispers of history guide you softly, gently into the arms of sleep. Breathe in the peace, the tranquility, and sleep soundly.